Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session. Can everybody hear me?
Yes. Hi, Dr. Cabrici. Nice to see you. Everybody can hear you.
Very good. Nice to see you as well. Welcome to our session. This is case study, a deeper dive into the design. So last year in 2018, we offer a very broad overview about case study. Today, we like to further focus on the design component of the case study. So with that said, Dr. David Proudfoot is here helping me throughout the session. I appreciate his help and moving the slide for me. Plus, he would add suggestion, comment throughout the session. If you have any question, please type into your chat, and David would read, and I try to address the questions throughout the session. At the end of the session, we will have a few minutes for discussion as well. In addition, I believe David is going to add another podium, right, David?
I will. Dr. Cabrici and I go back a couple years, and we have gotten a routine down for our platform, kind of as facilitators. But this platform is a little different because I'm the administrator for this one, which means I'm operating all the bells and whistles. And if there's something that's posted into the group chat, typically I can see it, like on Zoom and WebEx and Skype, I can see it. But on Shindig, I cannot see the group chat as the administrator. So if you do have a question for the group, what you're going to need to do in order for me to see it and then pose it to the entire group is on your screens at the bottom, you'll see that question mark icon. You would click that, type in your question there instead of to the group chat, and then submit it. What that does is it posts your questions directly to me, and I can either write you back as a private instant message, or I could post your question to the entire group to see if it pertains to the entire group, and then Dr. Cabrici can discuss and reference it with the entire group. So if you do have a question that needs to be addressed by Dr. Cabrici, just type it in using the question mark icon instead of the chat, and then we'll get it up and out so everyone can see it.
All right. Thank you, David. I got one question right before I start that was related to not hearing anyone speaking. So only you can hear David and I that are on the stage. Like you cannot hear anybody else. That's the way that Shindig is operating. So if you want to talk, please join the podium, and then we can hear you. Otherwise, obviously, we cannot hear anyone.
Exactly. The platform is set up like a large auditorium because it's designed for large groups. So just like in a real auditorium, if you want to say something for the entire group to hear, you would come up to a real life podium, say what you need to say, and then leave the podium when you're finished addressing the group. So right now we have one podium up, and only one person can access it at a time. So if you have a comment or a question that you need to share with the entire audience, just hover over that window, click Join Podium. Then it will bring you up on camera. Make sure your camera and microphone is working. And then once you're finished, you'll hover over that window again and click Leave Podium, and that will send you back down to the audience where you won't be heard by the entire group anymore. If you're camera shy or your camera or microphone is not working, but you have a question or comment, then you can go back to that question mark icon that we just talked about rather than coming up to the podium.
Very well. So one more comment regarding making the slide larger. David, can you make this larger for everybody, or the user need to make it larger?
I can get larger. This is what it will look like in full screen.
Okay. All right.
So is that more appropriate?
Yes, I think so, because there are some details that I guess everybody needs to see it in a larger screen. So this is better. Okay.
If there's any point in the study, Dr. Cabrici, or the presentation that you want the slideshow smaller, just let me know, and then I can reduce it back to this again.
Okay.
So just give me those kind of commands on what to do with it.
Sure. So before we start, is there any questions, particularly technical questions that you want us to address? You may just join the podium, click on the podium, and then we can address your issue. Then we start the presentation.
Looks like Mohammed's coming up. Hello, are you there?
It's trying to connect. Mohammed, you're muted. Okay, he left. So you can type your question, I mean, not in the chat box, as David mentioned, in that question mark area.
Also, during the presentation, if you need help, you can raise your hand. I'll get an idea of that, and then I can IM you privately and see kind of what you might need some assistance with. So we can juggle a couple things at the same time.
Very well. All right, so let's start the conversation, I would call it, not presentation. So the focus of today is mostly on the design. We like to focus on the case study design and discuss the component of a case study, design part of a case study. We do provide you with some definition at the beginning. I believe just you cannot jump all of it suddenly into the design, but it will be just a few slides. But then we will spend more time on discussing the design component. Along the conversation, I really like to clarify the confusing issues. There are some confusing issues related to case study that often I see for novice researchers, as well as some like not necessarily novice researchers, just like not clear for the researchers when they try to use case studies. So I try to clarify those issues as well. I do provide examples as I explain the materials, and also we try to answer your questions as well. Moving to the next slide, please. So I like you to introduce you to some case study prominent methodologists. Perhaps you heard the name of these people. They are very famous in case study. And the reason that I want to do this is just because it's good to know these people, and particularly their epistemology, because the way that they look at the world and the way that their philosophical point of view affect their suggestion related to case study. And as they publish a lot of materials, you see their materials, you may find these confusing. So I just wanted to share with you that there are three different perspectives here. Robert Yin, perhaps you heard about him a lot. He is coming from positivism background, looking at the world in a way that we can clearly and objectively identify our phenomenal, whatever it is. He do believe that in case study we can combine quantitative and qualitative. So I heard this a lot from students and also some other researchers that they are confused. Can we use quantitative as well? Is it only qualitative? So it depends on which methodologist you are following. If you are following Robert Yin recommendation, he is suggesting using both quantitative and qualitative. But then we have another methodologist, Robert Stick. He is also famous. His background coming from constructivism, believing that we can make the meaning, we construct the meaning in our mind. So basically, when we want to learn about something, the reality is not there objectively, we make it in our mind. So then he only basically recommend using qualitative data in case study. And similarly, you may heard about Miriam as well. She wrote a lot about case study. She does believe in constructivism, and she recommend only using qualitative data in case study. So I just wanted to briefly introduce these people. So when you see the materials coming from different methodologies, and you see contrasting view, you would be able to figure out why they have these different views. It's going back to their philosophical view. In this presentation particularly, I mostly follow Yin recommendations. And the reason that I'm doing this is because Yin provided a kind of very straightforward design blueprint for case study. The other methodologies, they provide some design, but it may not be as clear cut as Yin. So you will hear from me a lot referring to Yin materials. That doesn't mean that I prefer Yin over Steak or Merian. It's just like, particularly for some novice researchers, it's easier to follow Yin because of the very straightforward instruction that he has provided. And even with Yin, there are some area that is not very clear. So if happen that you want to go with Marianne or Robert Steak, that's fine. In this presentation, mostly we are using Yin materials. Moving to the next slide. So the definition of case study, so based on Yin point of view, case study is an empirical inquiry that investigates a contemporary phenomenon. Pay attention to this part. It's the phenomenon is in a real life context, and there are some boundaries, but the boundary between the phenomenon and context is not very clear. That's the definition that Yin is provided. And then Miriam believed that the case study is an in-depth description and analysis of a bounded system. So again, you see the bounded system, kind of the idea is repeated in Miriam definition. And then Steak believed that the case or the what is within a bounded system, and the bounded, actually the unit is surrounded with the boundaries. So that's the definition coming from Steak. And as you see, all three of them are more or less talking about, they use similar language, talking about the phenomenon that is surrounded with some boundaries. That's the definition of case study, looking for understanding a phenomenon out there that is surrounded with some boundaries.
Dr. Kabuchi, I have heard, I'll start by saying that case studies, the methodology is not my focus in my experience with background, but I did hear in the past that some researchers believe that case studies should only be carried out by usually therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, people who have clinical training to diagnose normal and abnormal behavior, because you're basically claiming that in some of the conclusions and implications. So is that is an educator considered an expert with clinical knowledge if they're going to do a case study of a phenomenon in the field of education, or does
Yes,
it matter?
No, actually, it is kind of cross-disciplinary. Case study can be used in different disciplines: education, business, as well as psychology. So we do have a lot of case study in psychology, but that doesn't mean that other fields cannot use it. So it is almost in every discipline I have seen case study.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, moving to the next slide, please. So here, when we talk about a boundary, here is an example. For example, if we say that there is a study about how older adults learn to use computers. And the unit of analysis or case is learner's experience. So as you see, this can be, you may have unlimited number of adult learners that can be included in this study. There is no boundary around this, right? So then this may not be a good study for a case study. If you want to turn it to a case study, you may need to focus on one particular program or one classroom, student of particular classroom. Then with adding this boundary, you can call it a case study, and you can focus on your case. So that's what I mean when I say boundary, because that's starting to those confusion part. This is one of these that often students say, what do you mean by boundary? What should I do? So that's one of the issues that you may consider when you want to use a case study. Okay, next slide, please. And then application of case study. Often you use, not often, always you use case study when you cannot manipulate behavior of those people involved in that study. So, like in experimental, quasi-experimental study, you can manipulate your variables, but in your case study, you cannot do this. Plus, the data collection is always in the very natural setting. And when I'm saying natural, means that you just try to observe and collect data. You do not interfere with the setting, and particularly develop intervention to have the particular data. Ryan, would you like to
Hi,
add
Mansur.
something?
Yeah, um, this is bringing up a question for me, which is, I mean, it actually goes back to a couple slides before where you were talking about constructivist versus positivist approaches, whether it was yin or whatnot. Are there any pragmatist approaches that also combine qualitative and quantitative?
Well, particularly, I think these are very prominent methodologies. I mean, the thing is that case study, you see a lot of different people coming and talking about it. That's one of the difficulty that you have in case study. Like, yeah, you may want to find some pragmatism here, but the ones that are mostly generating a lot of materials that researcher may use are these three, coming from constructivism and positivism.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So, for example, one of the questions that you may see as example of using case study in natural setting is like how and why a high school principal did an exceptionally good job. So you are not going to introduce any program or intervention for the principal to do a good job. You just realize that naturally the principal have done a great job. Now you want to learn why and how. So that's the example of natural setting and natural behavior when I'm talking about it. Moving to the next slide. And then you would see a lot of program evaluations with the case study. And I listed some of these studies here so that you can look at it. For example, case study of US and Chinese economic engagement in Angola. That's one example. Or in K-12 education, you see case studies have been very useful in program evaluations. So I just listed this so that you would have the reference. If you want to look at the details, you can do so. Moving to the next slide. Okay, so here is I call it master slide here, because from this slide on, I will talk about the steps that I have listed here. And again, this is from Yin. if you want to develop a case study, Yin recommended these steps. Number one, you got to have a research questions as just like any other study. You would need to have a propositions. Proposition, imagine proposition would be like kind of like hypothesis in a way that you are saying that I think that this is my, in a way, in a theory you can call it as well. For exploratory case studies, it's just like a purpose because you don't have anything in your mind, you just explore, so you don't have any propositions. And then you need to define your case or your unit of analysis. You got to select one of the 4 designs that I'm going to explain in the following slides. The data collection, and I added data collection here because if you look at the Yin materials, data collection is kind of embedded within the other systems steps. He did not include it openly somehow in the list, but I included here. And then you got to provide a logical link between the data and your propositions. And this is part of like your data analysis. Once you collect your data, you have your data, then you have to connect them back to your propositions. And then you got to have some criteria for interpreting the finding. And these criteria, it's not very clearly discussed even by Yin. But the point that he's trying to make here is that you got to have some, you have to clearly, openly say what are your criteria. It's not clearly recommended by methodologists, but you should be able to have your own criteria shared with your readers. Finally, you need to have some criteria for judging the quality of your research design. This is corresponding with validity and reliability in quantitative studies. And when I'm saying that the Yin is coming from positivism, you see the trend of view that he has. Like, if you look at Miriam materials, she wouldn't talk about validity reliability because validity and reliability came from the quantitative perspective. Excuse me. But Yin brings this for him, with him, to this case study. They do have some recommendation, Miriam, as far as like establishing trustworthiness of your study, but they do not use validity and reliability keywords. That's the thing that I just want you to pay attention. And then throughout your study, you use a theory, and the way that you use a theory is like you need to have a conceptual framework, theoretical framework in a way to develop your proposition to begin with. And that's again the recommendation that Yin has here. So I'm going to talk about these steps in the following slides, but please keep in mind these are these steps give you a kind of a good vision and plan for moving forward your study. And if you're going to have a either dissertation or study regular study, in the proposal section of your study, if you are going to use case study, you got to clarify these components and include these in your method section. Question here?
We don't have any questions from the group that have been sent in, but it looks like Armando's coming up to the podium.
Yeah, I
There he is. Hey, Armando, you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. As I was just seeing how elaborated this is, Dr. Gabrici, and I was thinking at Phoenix, and I only can see my side because I am a quantitative guy and I teach quantitative method of research. But the question arises is, do we teach how to conduct case studies at Phoenix so the students really know at least, of course, some kind of a basis that they can, they can start from there and then research appropriately. I don't recall having seen this in any of the classes. And if anybody qualitative attending this, please let me know, because I think this is mighty important. Not to mention that 70 something, 80 of the dissertations at Phoenix are qualitative, and I see quite a good quantity of case studies, Dr. Caprice. That's my question.
Yeah. So we do have a case study course, but the material is slightly different, and none of the methodologies that I listed earlier, their materials are not included in that course. That's a good comment, actually, Armando. Thank you. I think we do need to pay attention and further perhaps revise those courses. Hello, Liz. I cannot hear you, Liz. Maybe you are muted.
Looks like she's still trying to connect. It just takes a minute to connect.
I don't have myself muted.
There she
Yes.
is.
Okay, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay, all right. So if we use Yin, we can basically use him with a mixed study, right? That would have
Right.
qualitative and quantitative. So
Correct.
in that case, it's similar in a way to action research from what I'm kind of hearing. And I wonder then if there's the qualitative part, we would still be asking the students to talk about trustworthiness. And then for the quantitative piece, ask them to talk about the validity and reliability of the instrument they're using. Would that be right?
So, yes. So if with the Yin recommendation, you use both quantitative, qualitative, and for validity and reliability, he has particular recommendation that we are going to go over it. He doesn't call it trustworthiness. Even for the qualitative data, he just call it validity, reliability. He does not call it trustworthiness. Again, I think it's going back to his perspective. But as far as like your first comment that it is similar to action research, well, for action research, we do use quantitative, qualitative, but the purpose of action research is different. The focus of the action research is different. So it's totally different kind of design, but both of them use quantitative, qualitative. If you use Yin recommendation, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And
All right.
Dr. Karen Johnson had her hand up, so if she wants to share something, she can come up to the podium. If not, then I'll just IM her if she doesn't come up. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Caprici.
Okay. Next slide, please.
Sure.
Okay, so the research questions for case study. What type of research question we use? We often use how and why research question. And this is actually shared with Marian and Robert Steck as well. Like all three of these methodologies, they believe that the appropriate question for doing a case study start with how and why. And we have different type of case study. I will talk about this explanatory, exploratory, and descriptive in the following slide. But the example that we can use, for example, how do two organizations have a collaborative relationship? Or why do programmers fail to document their codes? So these are the two example of the questions that start with how and why, and we can use in case study. Questions that are not appropriate are the one that particularly look for cause and effects. Obviously, this is not experimental, quasi-experimental, comparative, causal comparative design. This is case study. Like, even though we are saying that we collect some quantitative data, we are not going to manipulate any variables, and we are not going to conduct any statistic here. So cause and effect, questions related to cause and effect cannot be addressed by a case study. There are some examples that you may want to explain a cause and effect relationship. That's different, you know. So when we are talking about experimental study, we want to see, for example, if using a game in class creates some learning enhancement or affect students, enhance the students' grade. That's cause and effect. You're really looking for the effect of the game, your intervention, your treatment on the students' grade. That's cause and effect. But sometimes you see that, for example, students free and reduced lunch. Students, a large number of students are having this like free reduced lunch status in the school, and then their performance is low as well. So that is happening. So you want to explain it why or how this is happening. So that can be done with case study, because you are not going to manipulate anything. This is just there. It's a phenomenon that students coming hungry to schools, they may not perform well, right? That's cause and effect, and you try to explain it. So that's what I mean when I'm saying not appropriate for cause and effect. And also when we are talking about how often something happened, that's like a survey study. You are not going to use that focus for case study. Next slide, please. So this is a table, again, it is from Yale, that compare different design. So for the form of research question, how and why, you see that for case study, archival analysis, survey, and experimental, we use how exclusively for case study. How and why is the main keywords. Only the experimental is the one that the behavior of the participants can be controlled. And also now it says focuses on contemporary events. It says yes, case study should focus on contemporary events, but again, to me, the contemporary, personally, I think that this may not be a case anyhow, but this is from Yale. So we have case study from I don't know, like 100 years ago, but it's been done. So it depends on how you define the contemporary, really. What is your window? So anyhow, let's not focus on that. But the point that here this table help us to see clear is that comparing with other design, we only focus on using case study if how and why is the purpose of our questions. Moving to the next slide, please. And then we have different type of case study. We have descriptive case study that you simply describe a phenomenon or an intervention at the real life context. One example is the question that how do women with Parkinson cope with their needs in a community? This was a case study done, and I included the reference for you so that you can look at the article. In the exploratory type, we try to explore the situation really, and we don't know really what would be the outcome. We cannot expect any particular outcome. One example is like the question was, how does a nurse-patient relation develop in a cancer treatment unit? And this was study done that I included the reference here as well. And then the third form is like you try to explaining some relation, as I explained earlier, like can be a causal relation. For example, why is a web-based e-commerce is effective in a company? So you just try to find and explain the reason that some cause and effect happen. And again, I provided the reference for you to read. Next slide, please. Now, this is the part 2. Once you develop your research question, then you need to have your proposition developed. And once you develop your proposition, you kind of set your scope as well. And once you try to explain what you want to really find out, that would increase also the feasibility of your study, because you try to focus on what sort of data you want to collect based on your proposition. In order to develop your proposition, you need to do some literature review to understand what's going on out there. You may use your personal experience, professional experiences, but then make sure that you have done your literature review so you know this study is viable. You should do it, and there are not similar study done that address the same questions. And then I provided one example here. For example, if your question is about why an organization, how an organization promotes their staff, your proposition perhaps is staff is promoted based on their skills in an organization. This is your suggestion, your, I would say, hypothesis even. But then you would go and collect your data and then compare. You may be able to confirm what you said here, or maybe contrast what you say at the beginning. You don't know at this point when you are developing your propositions. Liz is here. Liz?
Have my students under conceptual framework talk about their proposition. Would that be a correct location?
Oh, in the proposal, yes. If it is in a proposal, yes. Once you develop, you can, based on the literature and your conceptual frame, you come up with your proposition. Yes, you can do that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Next slide, please.
Hey, Dr. Cabrici, as far as
okay, now the most, yes.
When you're talking about your proposition, and you said based it on the literature and the theory, is this where your individual biases might come in? And should you kind of, I don't know, like how do we avoid being biased in the proposition? Is that your suggestion, is based on the literature and really make that strong connection from the literature to why we think this proposition is what it is?
So it's a combination of your personal experience plus supporting from the literature. That's how you can address your biases or reduce your biases. If you just only go with your professional experiences, you may not be able to develop a appropriate proposition here, because your view might be very limited. So you got to kind of develop expand your view, develop a better understanding when you go to literature, and then come back and write your proposition. And looking at the theory also help you develop and suggest a better propositions in a way.
All right, great. Thanks.
Okay, so the most challenging step, and these are part of like the blueprint that I mentioned, defining case and unit of analysis. I have seen that often people are confused about what is a case and what is the difference between a case and unit of analysis. Um, and then I noted that Yin also listed this as one of the challenging component of a case study. And then selecting the four design, and I'm going to talk about these four design. This is also very confusing. That what do we mean when there are these four design, like holistic versus embedded? So that's another challenging part. The data collection, it can be challenging because in case study we want everybody, all the studies have multiple sources of data coming from different sources, like coming from survey, coming from artifacts, coming from interviews, at least three different sources, and that is challenging for researchers, and it makes it first managing the data is it's becoming very difficult, and also making this happen, like the feasibility of being able to really have three different sources to collect data can be very challenging. And then the data analysis as well, I will talk about it in the following slide. It can be very difficult as we'll talk about it. So I just wanted to list the most challenging steps so we would be able to clarify these here in this presentation. Okay, moving to the next slide. So defining the case. The case is one thing, one particular clear phenomenon out there. It can be a person, it can be a group, it can be a specific policy that is out there, and you want to really investigate it. This Stake provided a nice explanation. He says it is always often a noun, but it's not a verb because you need to be able to visualize it. Like, for example, you cannot say I'm focusing on managing something, but you may want to say I'm focusing on managers, or you may not say I'm focusing on training, effect of trainings in general. You may want to say focusing on training modules, particular training modules. So that's your case. As I explained at the beginning, in cases that it's very important to have a particular boundary about your case. So that's how you try to define your case. Moving to the next slide. How to really define your case. There are some special cases that are very distinctive, like very extraordinary events. For example, a, a, a 2008, for example, 2008 recession, and then what happened to a particular company as a result of going to bankruptcy. That's like a really kind of special case. Or when some disaster happened, like Hurricane Katrina, and then the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. These are the cases. If you focus on those cases, you have a special case, right? So you always try to have a very unique case. But the thing is that if you move to the next slide, not always you may have this special, very extraordinary situation. Then what would you do? How are you going to have your case study? Well, the suggestion is really creating a situation with, as Yin mentioned, compelling framework. Like you try to make your focus narrow down and bring some addition that actually your case become unique and meaningful. So how you would do that? You would need to do some literature review. So for example, like if you try to this is the example that Yin also mentioned, that a study about an average American city and that's just like focusing on one city and how it developed the city. That can be just an average case, not unique enough. But then if you focus on like transition of that particular city from agriculture to industrial economy and how it affected the people living in that city, uh, would make this special enough. And that made it special enough at the time, at given time. This was like this study done in 1957. So you would find different ways, particular ways to make your study special and unique and worthy of doing, qualifying for being a case study. Armando?
Yeah, I have a question. We saw a lot of methodology and what the case study is, what can be done, what shouldn't be done, and so on and so forth. Now, how do you process the data? What are the techniques? What methods to compile, process, analyze, and then are they three case studies, methodologies going to produce the same results if they take the same exact case, but they go separate and they try to process it, right? What is the methodology? How do we get the data to make some meaning? Do we do it quantitatively? I mean, we do it with interpretation. What tools do we use to process the data? That's my question.
Okay, so yes, there are, I'll talk about data collection, and there are some recommendation for analysis as well in the following slides. So we'll talk about these, Armando. Moving to the next slide, please. Okay, so one thing that I have seen that is getting confusing is defining unit of analysis. Like we talk about the case, and now then there is this unit of analysis. So what is the difference between unit of analysis and a case itself? So the unit of analysis basically is the major thing that we are going to study. And that major thing can be the same as case if we are going to have a holistic design. And in holistic, when I'm saying holistic, there is just like one unit of analysis and one case. So unit of analysis and case, both of them are the same thing if we go with holistic design. But there are another design, we call it embedded design, that we have just a case. Like for example, we are talking about how an organization promote their staff. And so the policy of promotion is our case. But when it comes to organization, we may go and check the entire organization in globally, like entire organization, or we may focus on the employee only, or we may add the employee data from employees as well. So in that case, you add another unit of analysis. So then your case and unit of analysis would not be the same. So basically, you have embedded unit of analysis, that's employee data coming from employee, and then you have on higher level across all the department in an organization, you want to look at the policy of promotion. So that's the difference that make it confusing. And I heard it a lot that people don't know what is the difference between case and unit of analysis. And I hope it's clear. Okay, so this is the confusing chart, I know, type of design for case study. So, and I know it is confusing, and because it's confusing, I want to talk about it. And I'm looking at the time as well. We are getting close to the end of this. So as you see, there are 4 different types. The first part, this first type, is the first one. In looking at the chart in the top left corner, we have one case, and within that case, actually, there is just also one unit of analysis. That's single case, holistic single case design. So that's the first the first basically type of design. And then we have in the next cell, if you look at it, basically you would see that you have multiple cases there, but in each case there is no other unit of analysis, like the case is just there, nothing embedded under that. So that is called multiple case study, but still is holistic because the case and unit of analysis is the same. And then you come to the second row, you see that the embedded option. So you have just one case, like one case is one organization, but then you have two unit of analysis there. And then the last one, that is the most complex one, you have multiple cases, and in each case you have multiple unit of analysis. Example that I explained, but again, you can consider the case as organization. So when we are saying that in one organization, how the organization promote the staff, that's the case. Promote the policies, the case, and then organization by itself. You see that there is just one organization, one unit of study. That's the first one. And then if you go with the second option, holistic multiple case study, you want to do it in multiple organizations. So you just look at the entire organization, but not only in one organization, but maybe in 4 different organizations. So that would be holistic multiple case study. And then in the embedded one, you focus on only one organization, but you look at it across the department, and also you go and embed another unit of analysis, looking at the employees as well, collecting data from employees as well. So that's embedded one. And then in the fourth version, you are going to different organization. You have, like, for example, 4 organization, and in each organization looking at the policy across the department. Then also you go to the employees, you embed, you would add another unit of analysis. That's the fourth version. Is this clear, David? Tell me. Or not? Okay, so I guess, David, you are muted if you want to talk.
I just didn't want any echo. But yes, it's as clear as it can be tonight. It just takes some time to process. And again, I'm a big proponent of experience makes it really sink in. So as we do more and more case studies, I think it will make more sense.
Okay, so move to the next slide, please.
But the slide graphic is beautiful. It's just my lack of experience. That's the barrier right now.
Okay, Liz.
I just, this comes up a lot with...
Liz, do you have a question?
Yes, it comes up a lot in education where the researcher is going to use different schools within the same district. So that is still a single case study, isn't it? Or is that multiple?
It would be multiple case study with holistic. If the unit of analysis is the same in each school, there is just one unit of analysis, then it's holistic multiple case study. But if in each school you try to focus on different unit of analysis, for example, I don't know, focusing on students as unit of analysis, and then focusing on teacher, and then focusing on principal, right? So then you have multiple unit of analysis. So depend on what would be in your unit of in your school unit of analysis. It can be multiple embedded or multiple holistic case study.
Okay.
So here is just what I explained. I don't want to confuse more, but these, and I try to color code, saying that the organization that is red goes with the single case study, and the unit of analysis, number of unit of analysis goes with being holistic or embedded. That's how you see the colors are matching, yellow with yellow, red with the red. Okay, moving to the next slide. So that's the same chart. I just added same explanation that I provided in the previous slide. You may move on. Okay, so the question is, why do you really need to have multiple case studies? Why do you need to have cases, multiple cases? So it's the same as experimental study. So consider each case as like one experiment. So the more you do experiment, maybe you get a better result. That's the overall argument under under having multiple cases. But consider that as you add more and more cases, your study become very complex. So you don't want to really do this. If, for example, you are doing a dissertation for students, I always discourage them adding more cases, because case study by just even the single holistic case study is complex because you need to have multiple sources of data. So now adding more cases make it more and more difficult as far as managing your data. So I do not recommend it for students, but there are occasions that you want to add more cases as you want to reach to a better conclusion. Moving to the next slide. And then here is the data collection that I mentioned earlier. That's the hallmark of a case study, to use multiple data sources, particularly using the documentation, archive records, interviews, observations, artifacts, and surveys. These are the 6 common way of collecting data. Keep in mind that at the end, you got to put them all together. These are like pieces of puzzles that you put them together when you are analyzing them. And as you see, the opportunity for collecting quantitative data, if you go within, maybe it's when you collect survey, you may go with some quantitative survey. Next slide. And then for managing data, because we have a lot of data to handle, I recommend using one of these software. Particularly, I think Dedus is very appropriate, and I included the link for adding all the data there to manage your data. Next slide. And then these are some techniques that I mentioned earlier, Yin recommended. Now, you have your data collected, you want to analyze them. There are different ways of doing this. These different recommendation from Yin. One is like pattern matching. So basically, you try to match your collected data. You have a collected data, you have some emerging patterns. You try to compare these and match these with your predicted patterns. And these predicted patterns, basically, these are the ones that you earlier in your proposition you have. So you try to match them. See if you can match or not. You may end up not being able to matching them, right? So in that case, obviously your proposition may not be correct. So we are objective researchers. We don't have to always confirm what we thought at the beginning of the study. Maybe we ended up with some conclusion. Often we would end up with different conclusion and results. So that's one way to go. The other one is explanation building. You try to when you have particularly you try to explain some situation, explanatory case study. You try to put together your argument using the data. That's another way of handling it. The third one is going with the time series. Like there are series of events, and you try to explain what happened when, and you just put together the series of data based on like the with the time in time order. And often there should be a very logical sequence of explanation in this technique. And then the last one that is a little bit complex, it's when you have a cause and effect relationship, as I explained earlier, and you try to explain how these happen, you need to have some logical models. There are chains of events that you need to put together to make a very meaningful relation between these cause and effect that happen in your natural setting. And I see that we are over time now. David, can we move on?
Sure. Yes, we can. There's no questions.
So this is the role of theory that I mentioned. You need to use it for developing your proposition from the beginning. Let's move on because I don't want to take the time more than this. And this is related to judging the quality of your research that I mentioned, research design, that I mentioned earlier. So you see the language, the construct validity. Basically, in construct validity, we want to make sure that we selected, like we are collected, the operation, the measure that we use were collected. So the way that we are handling it in the case study, we try to triangulate. We try to triangulate our resources. Armando, have a question here. Would it be better to use a quantitative method for cause and effect? Definitely, for cause and effect, we do not use case study, Armando. For identifying any cause and effect, we need to use quantitative. The only reason that I mentioned cause and effect relation is when you try to explain it. You just explain the cause and effect, but you never identify cause and effect with case study. And then the internal validity, it's related to you establishing a relationship, and you would use one of the techniques that mentioned, for example, the pattern matching that I mentioned earlier. For the external validity, we want to see if there is any room for generalization. So keep in mind, you cannot generalize case study result the way that you do with quantitative, but you may want to logically explain it that the study can be applied in similar situations. And then lastly, how you are addressing the reliability, you would use the case study protocols, the recommendation, particularly from the prominent methodologists like the one that, like Yin, he provided a good protocol. All right, so moving to the next. This is the end of it. I know that I kind of speed up at the end of the presentation. I hope it was clear. Our next presentation is on March 7, and we are focusing on content analysis. If you have questions related to this case study and the presentation, you can continue posting your questions maybe to our asynchronous discussion thread at our site. If you go to research methodology site, we have the discussion thread for different designs. So at this point, is there any question that you want me to address before we finish? And there are some references that are very useful, particularly when it comes to these complex ideas that I know I kind of talk a lot and fast, and you may still have issues. So yes, please go ahead and use these resources.
One attendee, Dr. Cabrici, wanted to know if they could get the PowerPoint presentation, and I said usually you send that out afterwards. So with Shindig here, we'll have a attendance report of who is here, and we'll know exactly who is here and can get the presentation out to each of you.
Very good. Any questions?
And nothing from the group right now.
Comments? No comments.
I'll put the podium back up in case there was a comment.
There was a comment. Yeah, I see some messages, but let me see.
Somebody wants to slide back up with the resources. Cheryl does. So I'll put that up, and it looks like Armando, you can take the podium if you had a comment. Armando, you should be able to join the podium.
He's coming.
And Cheryl, I'm getting that slide up back up for you.
Okay. Well,
go ahead, Armando.
I think he has some connection issue.
Here you are, Armando.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. It's just a comment that I know moving forward, we're going to try one of the nicest features of Shindig, where we're going to do a presentation and then we're going to separate in groups so we can have like a discussions in groups. And that's something I really excited to try, because maybe we can do interactive, I don't know, interactive discussions, case study, and then we can come back and then group A and group B and group findings. So that's coming and that's moving, that's coming. I just learned of that. It's very nice. And I just wanted to mention that aloud, Dr. Cabrici. That's a nice feature we're going to try.
Right, you're right. So Shindig, let us have it like a group activity for in the future presentations. I think it would be great if we can design a presentation that include group activities. All right, so if there is no more questions, then thank you for your time. I know we are 8 minutes past. Oh, Patricia is here.
While we're waiting for Patricia, thank you, Dr. Capucci, for a great session. We're starting off strong with these, so I know it was very much appreciated by the group. I think at one time we had 30 people in here, so it's a great success for this evening.
Thank you, David. Let's see, Patricia is trying to connect. Patricia, would you like to add your question? Type your question if you cannot connect.
Yeah, she might do that.
All right. Yes, please go ahead and type your question. I don't see her question here. So I encourage everyone to continue being active and ask questions in our website. And thank you for your time again, and have a great evening.
You too. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, David.